You don't need motivation. You need a code, because motivation is a feeling, and feelings are weak rulers. A code is law. A code doesn't care how you feel. A code tells you what to do when you feel nothing. Right now, you're not failing because you're broken. You're failing because you're ungoverned. You wake up and you negotiate with yourself like a coward bargaining for comfort. Just 5 more minutes. Tomorrow I'll start. Today was hard. I deserve this. And every time you make that deal, you don't just lose a day, you lose respect for yourself. A man without a code is a ship with no compass. The wind decides where you go. The waves decide how you feel. The storm decides what you become. And the storm always wins. Look at your life with cold eyes. How many promises have you made to yourself and then quietly buried? How many times have you said, "I'm going to change," and then returned to the same habits like a dog crawling back to its own vomit? You know what that is? That is a man living without law. And without law, there is only impulse. Impulse makes you weak. Impulse makes you addicted. Impulse makes you soft. A code is not a quote on a wall. A code is not a mood. A code is a weapon. It cuts indecision. It kills excuses. It forces you to stand up, even when you'd rather disappear. You want to stop feeling lost? Then stop living like your emotions are your commander. You will not be saved by inspiration. You will be saved by rules, by standards, by vows you keep even when nobody is watching. This is what men used to understand. Hard times forged hard men because there was no room for softness, no room for endless thinking, no room for self-care as an excuse to avoid suffering. There was duty, there was work, there was survival, and a man who couldn't govern himself became a liability. He put the group at risk, he put the family at risk, he put the mission at risk. Today, you can be a liability and still be comfortable. That's the trap. Comfort lets weak men survive, but it doesn't let them respect themselves. And without self-respect, you slowly rot from the inside. That rot becomes anxiety. That rot becomes depression. That rot becomes rage. That rot becomes numbness. And you call it mental health as if the problem is mysterious. The truth is simpler. You are at war with yourself, and you've been losing because you refuse to live by a code. So listen carefully. I'm not here to hype you up. I'm here to give you something stronger than motivation. I'm here to give you structure. I'm here to give you law. Because when your life has law, you stop drifting. When your life has law, you stop begging for feelings. When your life has law, you become dangerous again. Not dangerous to the innocent, dangerous to weakness, dangerous to temptation, dangerous to the part of you that wants to quit. Now I'm going to tell you the truths that men avoid. Not 5 soft tips, not inspirational slogans. A code, and if you take it seriously, your life will start to change. Not when you feel ready, but when you obey. Here are the principles. 5 is the minimum. But I'm giving you more because your life depends on it. Principle 1. You do not negotiate with weakness. Weakness is not your friend. It doesn't want peace, it wants control. Weakness speaks in your voice. It uses your own thoughts against you. It says, rest, but it doesn't mean recover. It means avoid. It says, you deserve it. But it doesn't mean reward. It means relapse. It says, you have time. But it doesn't mean patience. It means delay. If you negotiate with weakness, you will lose every time, because weakness only needs you to hesitate. 1 hesitation becomes 2. 2 becomes a habit, and a habit becomes your identity. A man who negotiates with weakness becomes a man who cannot trust himself. And if you can't trust yourself, you will never build anything. Not a body, not a career, not a family, not a legacy. So the rule is simple. When you know what is right, move. No delay, no debate. You don't need to feel like it. You need to do it. Principle 2. Your word is your spine. You want to know why you feel weak. Because you've broken your word so many times, your mind no longer believes you. Every time you say, "I'll wake up early," and you don't. Every time you say, "I'll train," and you don't. Every time you say, "I'll stop," and you don't. You are teaching your own soul that you are a liar. And a man who is a liar to himself is the most dangerous kind of weak, because he will always find a reason. He will always have an excuse. He will always blame the world instead of judging himself. A code begins here. If you say it, you do it. If you commit, you execute. If you promise, you deliver, even if you do it tired. Even if you do it angry, even if you do it without applause. Your word is not a suggestion. Your word is law. And the first man you must prove it to is yourself. Principle 3. Discipline is freedom, not punishment. Weak men think discipline is suffering. Strong men know discipline is the door out of slavery. Because without discipline, you are controlled. Controlled by food, controlled by lust, controlled by distraction, controlled by comfort, controlled by the opinions of strangers. And a controlled man is not a man. He is a puppet that eats, sleeps, and consumes until he dies. Discipline is the act of taking the chains off. It is choosing pain now so you don't live in pain later. It is choosing effort so you don't live in regret. It is choosing hard mornings so you don't live in a hard life. You tell yourself discipline is cruel because you've been addicted to ease, but ease has been cruel to you. Ease has stolen your time. Ease has stolen your pride. Ease has stolen your strength. So stop calling discipline too much. It's the minimum. It's what you owe your future. Principle 4. Your body is your responsibility. I don't care what your job is. I don't care what your past is. I don't care what excuses you've been hiding behind. If your body is weak, your mind will follow. A weak body makes a fragile spirit. A fragile spirit collapses under pressure, and pressure is guaranteed in life. You will face betrayal. You will face loss. You will face hunger. You will face failure. You will face loneliness. You will face the cold truth that nobody is coming to save you. So, you train. Not for vanity, not for attention. You train because your body is the armor your soul lives in. Strength is not optional. Endurance is not a hobby. Self-control is not a personality trait. It is a duty. Train even when you don't want to, especially when you don't want to, because that moment when you don't want to is the moment you are being tested. Principle 5. You must embrace discomfort as a teacher. You keep running from discomfort, and you wonder why you don't grow. Growth lives where comfort dies. Discomfort is the forge. Discomfort is the mountain. Discomfort is the cold water that shocks you awake. If your life has been soft, you will be shocked by basic difficulty. A small problem will feel like a disaster. A little rejection will feel like death. A hard conversation will feel impossible. That is not because life is harder than before. It's because you are softer. So you train discomfort on purpose. You do hard things when you have a choice, so you're not destroyed when you don't. You wake up earlier than you need to. You train harder than you feel like. You work when you want to escape. You speak the truth when silence would be easier. You do it because discomfort is a mentor. It teaches you who you really are. Principle 6. A man must carry weight, not just in the gym, in life. Men were built to carry weight, responsibility, duty, consequences. And when you don't carry weight, you become weight. You become a burden, a consumer, a complainer, a man who takes and never builds. Carrying weight gives you purpose. It gives you structure. It gives you meaning. Because meaning is not something you find in a book. Meaning is something you earn by being needed. So make yourself needed. Be competent. Be reliable. Be the man people can count on when things go bad. Not the man who disappears. Not the man who collapses. Not the man who needs constant comfort and reassurance. A warrior is calm under pressure because he trains for pressure. Principle 7. Control your tongue. Most men talk too much. They announce plans. They beg for validation. They argue with fools. They confess weakness to people who don't deserve their truth. Silence is power when your silence is disciplined. Silence is not fear. Silence is restraint. A man who speaks less hears more. A man who speaks less thinks deeper. A man who speaks less moves more. Your results should speak for you. Your actions should be your announcement. And when you do speak, speak clean, direct, honest, without cowardice, without cruelty. Truth is a blade. A blade does not scream. It cuts. Principle 8. You must master your impulses. If you can't control your appetite, you are not free. If you can't control lust, you are not free. If you can't control anger, you are not free. If you can't control distraction, you are not free. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. That's slavery to wanting. Freedom is doing what you must, regardless of what you want. A boy follows desire. A man commands desire. And your code is the chain of command. When your impulses rise, you don't panic. You observe them like a hunter watching an animal. You let the urge pass. You don't obey it. You don't worship it. You don't make it your God. Because every time you obey impulse, you become weaker. And every time you resist, you become stronger. It's that simple. Principle 9. You must choose pain over regret. Pain is unavoidable. Either you choose the pain of discipline, or you suffer the pain of regret. One pain builds you. The other pain eats you alive. The pain of discipline is sharp and clean. It burns, then it passes. The pain of regret is slow poison. It sits in your chest at night. It whispers when you're alone. It laughs at you when you see what you could have been. A man chooses the pain that makes him stronger. He does not hide from pain. He uses it. Principle 10. Build your days like a fortress. Your day is either designed or invaded. If you wake up and immediately feed your mind noise, screens, cheap entertainment, endless information, your mind becomes chaotic. Chaos makes you impulsive. Impulse makes you weak. So you build a fortress. You decide the first hour of your day belongs to you, not to distraction, not to other people's opinions, not to chaos. The first hour is for training, for silence, for planning, for prayer if you live under something higher than yourself, for setting the tone like a commander preparing his troops. Then you step into the world, already armored. Principle 11. Earn confidence through competence. Confidence without competence is arrogance. Arrogance gets exposed. A real man doesn't need to pretend. He becomes capable. He becomes skilled. He becomes reliable. He learns what other men avoid learning. He practices what other men avoid practicing. He trains until he is sharp. Then confidence arrives naturally. like a shadow following strength. If you want confidence, stop chasing it. Build competence. Confidence is the reward. Principle 12. A code demands sacrifice. You don't get to keep everything. Weak men want transformation without cost. They want the body without the training, respect without the standards, purpose without responsibility, legacy without sacrifice. That's fantasy. A code is real because it costs. It costs late nights. It costs comfort. It costs addictions. It costs weak friends. It costs excuses. It costs the old version of you, and that old version will fight to survive. It will plead. It will cry. It will bargain. It will promise it will change later. Kill later. Later is the graveyard of men. You sacrifice now. You become now. Principle 13. Hold yourself accountable like a judge. Stop treating yourself like a fragile child. A fragile child needs constant comfort. A man needs truth. If you fail, you don't spiral into shame. You don't write poetry about your sadness. You look at the failure like a commander reviewing a battle. What happened? Where did you break? What rule did you violate? What will you change tomorrow? Then you correct. You tighten the code. You return stronger. Accountability is not self-hate. Accountability is self-respect. Principle 14. Live with moral clarity. The modern world wants you confused. Confused men are easy to control. If you don't know what you stand for, you will kneel to everything. A code is moral clarity written into daily life. It tells you what you do when nobody sees. It tells you what you tolerate. It tells you what you refuse. It tells you how you treat women, not as objects, not as enemies, but with restraint and honor. It tells you how you treat other men, with brotherhood when they are worthy, and boundaries when they are not. It tells you how you handle power, with discipline, not tyranny, because masculinity without morality becomes destruction. The warrior's code is not a license to be cruel. It is a standard to be strong without becoming corrupt. Principle 15. Your legacy is being written now. You keep thinking legacy is something later, when you're older, when you have money, when the time is right. No, legacy is what you do when you are tired. Legacy is what you do when nobody claps. Legacy is what you do when temptation knocks. Legacy is the standard you live by when it would be easier to sink. Your future son, if you have one, will not care about your excuses. He will become what you modeled. Your future daughter, if you have one, will not care about your speeches. She will measure men by what you demonstrated. And even if you never have children, your life still leaves a trail. People will walk behind you. They will either see discipline or decay. So decide now, because a man without a code becomes a ghost. He exists, but he doesn't live. He consumes, but he doesn't create. He talks, but he doesn't build. He wants, but he doesn't earn. And one day he wakes up older, weaker, full of regret, asking where the years went. They went to comfort. They went to distraction. They went to weakness. And that is the fate you are avoiding right now, by listening. So here is the final truth. Motivation is a spark. A code is firewood. A spark dies in the wind. Firewood burns through storms. You don't need to feel inspired. You need to obey. You need rules you do not break. You need standards you do not lower. You need a daily code so simple and so brutal that even on your worst day, you still move forward. Because a man is not defined by his best day. He is defined by what he does on his worst day. So build the code, live the code, and when your emotions rebel, when your mind tries to betray you, when weakness whispers that it's too late, You will answer with the only thing that matters: law, discipline, duty, and you will become the kind of man the modern world cannot break.